Oi, pessoal. Good afternoon, everybody. So we are starting another session today for sem especificação. And today we are very glad to have here Bernhard Luecke from SAP support team. He is a senior director in the product support team, and we will be
Und yeah,
talking about product support. So Bernhard, you can introduce yourself and say anything that you want in the beginning.
okay. Yeah, thanks for the warm welcome and hello everyone. Bom dia. Falo ainda pouquinho do português brasileiro, de morar no Porto Alegre. But this is already a while ago, so but we can mix anyway, whatever fits better. Yeah, trying to make a long story short. I mean, time is limited. I'm with SAP for 23 years, I think, soon. First at an SAP customer, then with consulting, and then I joined support, incident support here in Spain. Then I built the support center in SAP Labs LA in Porto Alegre from zero. That was a fantastic time. I lived 2 years in Porto Alegre. Also worked closely with the colleagues in Sao Paulo, fantastic people also. And then I returned to Spain to Prem engagement, max attention, for big customers, completely different story, implementation projects with huge budgets and so on. And then some years later, I returned again to product support. It was a very interesting time when we introduced chat, schedule an expert. We start to get more out of machine learning, also support assistants, and so on and so forth. We became really a kind of quite different organization. And then we changed 2 years ago into a different organizational model, not by geography, but by product. So there's not anymore the center in Spain, the center in Brazil, the center in China. They still exist, but now we have one team, for example, supporting S/4HANA Procure, so components basically, or one team supporting SD sales, and this is a global team. All the colleagues around the world work together in one pool with one team collaboration, and since then I'm heading the people that deliver for sales and procure, so star, SRM, SD, LE, and some other components like global trade service and so on. Yeah, it's a fantastic journey so far.
Yeah, quite long journey.
Yes, excellent. I'm looking forward for the next 20, 25 years.
And I think that that's a very interesting point. When I
Mm,
worked in SAP, it's now 5 years ago I left. Product support organization was completely different. I think it changed many times since then, and lots of things were introduced. And
yes.
most of the people that watch my website and follow my blog, they are consultants, so they interact sometimes
Mm,
on a daily basis with SAP support team. But one thing is very interesting. Many consultants, they do not know the new channels.
mm, mm,
They are
yeah.
really aware about OSS incidents.
Mm,
People still say OSS incidents, even though I think this name changed
yes.
20 years ago. Probably when you started,
Right.
it was not the OSS anymore.
Yes.
You s-
It's so established. Yeah.
do
I
you
mean,
have any idea or
yeah.
why people are not following, or what
Mm,
have you been doing recently to try to get more people to participate and engage in these new support
yeah.
models? I understand it's quite important for SAP also to have these new support models.
Yeah, actually, because in a number of situations, it really adds value. So, of course, and we see this also now. Since the summer, we made big changes. We reduced our backlog enormously, and we are now much faster with the written cases since mid-August or so. I wouldn't have thought that this was possible. And we get less chats since then because many cases are answered within 24 hours. So the difference to the chat is not so big anymore. But before, we had unfortunately cases where maybe the first answer was within 3 days or so. Then the chat to us is much more attractive. So there is really the value case, or what call the schedule an expert, where when you have some whatever communication difficulties, you can book a session with the engineer. You define when you talk to the engineer, and then you have a 15, 20 minutes call to clarify some details or misunderstanding. And I'm as stunned as you. I think these channels, of course, I would not like 100% by chat. It's impossible. There are very complex cases, but there are really many that can be answered fast or pre-clarified. Why isn't it used more often? I also don't know. I mean, we are not marketing professionals, of course, and no salespeople. This is maybe part of the reason. And to explain the business to really professional marketing people would also take a lot of time. Uh, if you have an idea or the people listening here, yeah, just help us what to use, because we know it doesn't make sense to send mails, right? They are not read, so you need to go through the tools or so, and then it really depends how often do you interact with us. I mean, we have many people that create one incident every 2 months or so. And this is also in our private life. When we use an app, maybe every 2 months, the provider of the app also wants to make us use more functionalities really, and to share with us this is new to get us more stuck into the app, but we are not interested, right? We just want to get our stuff done, so we never read release notes or so. We react in the same way. A different story is a program or an app, that the site that you use every day, right? There maybe you really are interested in trying out new functions because maybe you can save time. So if you are an intensive user of support, please try it out. There's one thing, it's a product support accreditation program, it's called. It's really a very short modular program. It's, I think, maybe 6 units of 15 minutes each, where we try to explain what is expert chat, what is SAE, yeah, how are the support assistants working, what is scheduler manager. This is also great. Yeah, we know this from call centers. Sometimes you are really desperate. You shout to the call agent, right? I want to talk to your manager. We have no manager. It's usually the answer, right? So we have it. If you have a high incident older than 2 days, you can click a button and you can schedule a call in with according to your agenda with the team manager. Yeah. So also really very attractive things.
Yes, that is very interesting. And also, I like that you mentioned the chat. That is a functionality I use. I work in the area of localization. And
Yes.
yeah, in this area, we have lots of legal changes and also small bugs due to hundreds of changes that happen every month. And I interact frequently with the support. And I liked the chat when it was made available for lots of components. When I was in the support team, I wasn't a big fan of the chat idea,
Yeah.
but now as a customer of these, I think it's really good because at least from my point of view, I always get instant feedback from my request, and I can also provide additional information if what I say is not clear. I remember
Yes.
when I was in support, that was always a big problem because sometimes you get an instant, it doesn't have all the details, and then it stays 2 days in the queue to, okay, then we need more information. And that is
Yes.
complicated to handle. The chat eliminates that, the instant feedback. But I also imagine it puts a lot of pressure in the team because they need to be
Yes.
available all the time there.
There are different personalities. Some, the millennials and the new guys, they like the chat. They are used to this kind of conversations, also in private life. The rather older guys, like myself, we sometimes prefer written communication. And of course, the interruptions are annoying, and they also like a CPU switch, right? It also drags efficiency if you have to switch context. Imagine you are debugging something for 2 hours and there is a chat coming in that really kind of kills you. But it is what it is. Um, and it's not always like this. We try to set up the teams in a way that maybe 2 people are on this chat shift and the others can work without the interruption, right? And you are right. Sometimes we also dream of that we can chat to the S user because, as you said, we just miss a certain information. Just the document type is not mentioned. And we are, I think, also even thinking about trying to establish something like this, where maybe you could also show us when you are available to be, or we just send a quick link or so. Just for these small pieces of information, it's very annoying that something is stuck for 2 days or 3 days. We also don't want this. We would like to process things as efficient as possible.
Yes, one thing I didn't realize when I was in support, sometimes the customer sent a ticket and it was really not clear, impossible to understand what was there. But sometimes
Yes.
the consultants on the customer side, they already know everything. They know the company code details, the document types, and everything. It's really clear for them, and they miss that small detail that is really relevant for the
Yeah.
support.
This is something, and again, it's about also campaign and make this more, let's say, more awareness, because videos, for example, recording a video to reproduce a case is so much more efficient than writing it down. And now, of course, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, to send a video, maybe also with all respect from Brazil, maybe it was challenging, or from China. And now this is all very easy. But we are still living a little bit in the past, I think, and not using this often enough. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that enterprise tech is a bit slower when it comes to implementing all these new functionalities because
Yes.
people are used it in social media and this kind of
Yes.
social platforms, but enterprise tech is really different. It's
It
more
comes with a
complicated.
delay. Yes. And there are also sometimes reasons for it. So I also sometimes the engineer tells me, look, if I chat like in IM, inventory management, sometimes, or in sales, sometimes things are really, really complex. If a discount is calculated or so with all the conditions, I'm sometimes stunned when I read through incidents and I think, wow, you really need a PhD to understand SAP software, right? And companies want this complexity, but then they say, look, with the chat, sometimes it's more painful because I have to ask 10 questions, I get the answers, there's always 2 or 3 minutes of delay. If the consultant writes really everything down and sends it to me, it's maybe even 15 minutes faster. So it all comes with pros and cons, you know.
Yes. And talking about these new things, I saw a blog post from SAP about a new program. At least I saw it as a
Hmm.
new program. Ask an expert. That was
Yes,
something that existed
yes,
for success factors,
yes.
and now it's being rolled out to basically,
Mm,
I think, lots of modules. Do you have
yes,
more info about that? I thought it
yes.
was really interesting, the idea.
Mm, yeah. It's we what we try, and so first of all, also it comes in the past, also with Gerd Oswald, and with all respect, he, he was a great board member, but and there was a different philosophy. Sometimes in the past we were more a cost center, and of course we wanted to provide reliable quality, but when we had great people, they were also rather sent on site to help the biggest customer. And this is still kind of the case, but we we kind of have more this innovation agenda. And here it's also about, let's say, reserving our people should really solve the cases where no one else can help. You know, really the cases that are caused by SAP software problems, or by the deep complexity of the SAP software, or because the documentation, sometimes we know it's not really complete or not complementing all scenarios. So where no one else can help, our engineers should solve the issues. But other cases that don't, for example, don't need even a system connection, or they can be at the end solved by the documentation. Of course, ideally, the consultants around the world can solve them, but there are also companies that cannot invest so much also in partners or in training their users. So everyone can come to SAP, but what we try is that, let's say, again, that maybe some types of incidents are either maybe solved by self-service or by this incident solution matching or by consultants. Like it's like an external workforce. You know, that all the companies have a certain percentage of external workforce. That is also for changes in the incoming. We can expand the external workforce more easy maybe than the internal workforce. So these are consultants, and consultants around the world can apply to work with us. There's a blog that publishes how to do so. And then the customer, and it's for now up to the customer. It's a little bit like chat. You can choose, oh, I go to this Ask an Expert peer, and they, yeah, mostly by their knowledge from implementations, which is also a little bit different to our knowledge, they often solve a certain share. Like once this is let's say like in success factors running for a couple of years, also customers know better which kind of issues are rather solved by the ask an expert peer. And I think 50, 60, 70% or even more of the cases are solved by this experienced consultants. But the cases where, for example, a correction is necessary or it's a new bug, this is of course not so frequent, or it's really too complex, or it requires system connection, then sometimes they arrive at this ask an expert peer pool and they forward it then to us because they cannot solve it. It's not meant to replace SAP support by no means, but if these people can solve 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10%, fantastic. Then our engineers have more time to be faster with the real support issues. Yeah, so everyone wins at the end, you know.
Yeah, no, for me that's a very interesting concept. I didn't know it from other
Mm,
companies. I checked also the website of the software provider that does this tool for SAP, and it was
mm,
really interesting. And I think that it is also connected to something, as a partner now I see that many consultants they don't know the
mm.
difference of what is the scope of support and what is the
Yeah,
scope of implementation, and that's something important. I remember sending to customers in the past a very famous note 83020. What is consulting? What is support?
yes,
And I sometimes talk to consultants and try also to explain. I understand both sides from SAP and from the customer. And I understand that SAP has the focus on the product, not on the implementation side. The implementation side is really an additional service. Customers can buy that from
yes,
SAP,
yeah.
but that's not the scope of support.
That's true. It's a difficult topic, and we maybe need a dedicated session only for this. And we would love to receive any kind of question and problem and give the best possible answer. But what we sometimes experience, yeah, there is a number of cases that are really caused by SAP software. And this is like all software products. There's no error-free software product, right? So we need to tackle this and fix it. But imagine, and we also know how sometimes very critical businesses are run with SAP, and an outage of a system can mean a cost of hundreds of thousands of dollars per day or even worse. And what happens sometimes? Look, there is a very high and maybe some highs in the queue, and they are caused by SAP software errors, so we need to fix them. But at the same time, there are cases coming in. How do I design a chart of accounts or so? This is coming as a case, you know, or how can I really see how to flag a talent in HCM? I mean, you see immediately if you are the customer with the productive system down, and imagine that one of our engineers answers such a question, you would get very angry at the end. So we need to find a balance here, and we, at least as much as possible, of course, we need to try and find out as SAP how to help also with this question. Uh, we don't want that the end user or key user is really getting desperate, but but we need to focus on the really burning problems that are caused by SAP software and no one else can solve. And that said, I just would like to add, of course, for business critical situations and very highs, we never use this node, right?
Ah,
If it's
yes.
a very high and the productive system is down, we work until there's a workaround or a solution. The business can be restored. There we would not say, oh, you have deleted the user, it's your problem, or you have deleted the table, it's not please don't go to the next door, you know. There we never use it. But again, for P2 to P4, yeah, we need to make sure to provide the best service to the cases that only we can solve. This is where it's coming from. Yeah.
Um, Thanks. I remember that also because I used to work for COE, and I also handled the escalation cases and
Yes.
also the production down scenarios, and that it was always a discussion. And we've
Right.
got one question from Sinspiri, related to how SAP evaluates the support team service. I think that
Ah,
that's
okay.
also an interesting
Yeah.
question because sometimes consultants they don't understand the ratings or they don't give
Mm,
ratings.
yeah.
That's a good one, I guess.
I think when I talk to customers, most are surprised about how important this is for us. Although when you think through, it's kind of immediate. So of course, the customer satisfaction, this is this rating between 0 and 5. It's part of every meeting. Every meeting, yeah. So may it be the average here in my product family, I'm talking about the 200 consultants, engineers, I should say, support engineers that deliver services. May it be for a team where a support team manager is responsible, may it be for an engineer in the one-on-one. Customer satisfaction is always on the table. And we look, of course, mainly into the trend. Where is it going? Then there are the so-called button boxes. Everything that is 1 or 2, we call it a button box. And we have a goal for this, which is 5%. So we allow only 5 out of 10 ratings being a 1 or 2. 5 out of 10. You might expect that we get many more bad ratings, but it's not the case. So we are close to this. We are around 5, 6, 7% to this. And there's a number of reasons, of course. We look very much into the reasons. And when there is such a button box event, 1 or a 2, there's a workflow triggered for the support team manager. And it's mandatory that we contact the customer to understand better what has been really leading to this low evaluation. And there's a mandatory follow-up also with the engineer to see what has happened, could we have avoided? And yes, of course, sometimes we could have worked better, of course, yeah, then we try it. Sometimes it's rather caused by a product problem. Yeah, then the customer is angry. You know, localization, we cover maybe only 85% of the legal requirements. We don't cover when the good was produced in Paraná and it's sold in Porto Alegre in the free harbor or so. Some things are really too exotic and relevant only for 5% of the companies, right? But the customer with certain reason is angry and gives us maybe a bad rating also for the support, although it's maybe rather the product. Or we have told the customer, look, your question, how to configure the discount, this is not something that we should deal with in support. And then we get also a bad rating. But again, when we started to, and we have to admit, we started this again, we were a little bit more tough since August with the consulting questions. Yeah, when we can answer them, we answer them immediately. But if it takes us more than 1-2 hours, we need to stop there. With this and other things, we brought our backlog down from 2,500 to 1,000 cases. That means only 5-6 per engineer. And now our CSAT, as we just mentioned, jumped from 4.1. This was the general CSAT, also 4.1 out of 5. I think it's respectable. We now grew to 4.3. So quite an increase in the customer satisfaction. Yes, we make some customers more unhappy because we cannot invest 5 hours into answering such a question. But the overall satisfaction is much better because we are in general much faster with the incident handling, and the speed is at the end the most important factor for the customer satisfaction.
Oh, that's
Long
that's
answer.
quite interesting.
Sorry.
No, but that's quite
But
interesting. I remember
yeah.
some of the KPIs. They are quite similar to what we had in the past. So basically, you have CSAT and you have the bottom box. These would be the two most important, and you do
Yes.
evaluation also qualitative on what
Yes.
happened in those cases. That's also
Yeah.
important. That's good. It's not only a number, but also a
No.
real case
And
behind it.
yes, and actions, and besides, we also have a quality assurance. So we really pick arbitrarily. The supporting managers have a tool that makes them looking into a number of incidents between 5% and 10%, just arbitrarily, like quality tests, right? To check what is going on, what can we improve. So this is also helpful. And also one thing that we now look more into, I think it's also interesting, we also have this effort evaluation. So one question is the satisfaction with support. And there's a specific question, how do you judge the effort that you had? because of course it makes a difference if you have to apply 15 nodes with 2 manual changes, or 1 node that can be applied with S node and it's all automatic, right? Or is it all in 2 KBAs that are well structured, or is it spread over 15 KBAs? So your effort can be different. And we want also to minimize the effort, because this is at the end, time is gold, right? This is speaking, so that the ecosystem spends less time with this effort that they have to solve a case is really also important. I mean, it's closely linked to the customer satisfaction, but we want to start to look even more also into diminishing the effort for the ecosystem.
That's cool. And you mentioned KPA. That is also interesting word and topic. When I was at SAP, the KPAs were more or less introduced in SAP support. Now, let's
Yeah.
say it's an industry standard. I think almost all tech companies they have this kind of knowledge articles. They are useful, and now they are also available in Google. We can
Yes.
find through Google search. That was a great idea. That was a great improvement because when they are restricted to the support portal, it gets much more complicated. Sometimes we just Google it
Mm.
and now we
Yes.
find it. That was a good one from SAP, but we still don't have the full content. That is something that one day would be available. It's in the idea of SAP or not. That contains too much sensitive information.
It's fantastic that you mentioned this. I need you as an ally, because I agree with you. That was a big move forward, but I am fighting, and I'm not getting tired to argue to make more content public, really public, ungated. And of course, we need to be compliant and let's say also look into legal restrictions and so on. So maybe, and I accept it's not so easy to just flag all the KBAs as public. On the other hand, they usually don't have a code correction, so it should not be too difficult to make them public. Or we have maybe need a specific additional document type. We had the wikis also in the community, as you remember, but wikis, there's like a feeling that they're a bit old-fashioned, although I don't share this opinion, but whatever it is. So what I want to say, we need, I think, more real public knowledge, and maybe even knowledge where we can collaborate with the customer, right? Maybe with an like Wikipedia, like with an editing process, but that everyone can contribute. And I think this will come over the next 2, 3, 5 years, because this will really make the ecosystem even better. Yeah, and enable even more self-service, that you find actually the solution on your own. Yeah, if we cannot make KBAs public, then maybe we need a new document type. We use sometimes blogs now, but it's not the right thing. It's not easy to index blogs. There's no given structure. So we are moving into this direction, and I'm fighting for it. So
Yeah, thanks. That I think
mm,
it would be very good because one fight that we have with consultants and we all have discussions is that sometimes documentation is in closed space that we cannot easily find. There is this Jane group
yes,
you need to request access, or this kind of in the past was very common. This kind of webinar you requires you an S user to see it, and most of the consultants, that is something weird, but most of the consultants they don't have S users, or
mm,
sometimes the consulting companies they have generic as user for a group of consultants, so nobody is
yeah,
really accessing every day the support portals and official channels.
yeah. Maybe that would be another solution, to have something like another. I mean, we have some P user for some partners, but I also say better it's to have it public. Really, documents where the complete content is indexed also with Google and searchable. So we should try to get there, and also have more on the community. So we were in the past more engaged on the SAP community with SAP support. As you know, there were many changes on the community, and now for localization, we have sometimes these gated gem groups. We now start to pilot again more engagement on the community. Like also we discussed this consulting question. So when we have the answer for a consulting question and it comes as a case, we are now starting in purchasing to publish this as the answer of a thread in the Q&A space in the community, because then it's even more visible. It's a small step, but as I said, we want to come closer again to the community, and this at the end should include also publishing more knowledge publicly on the SAP community, because it's a fantastic tool where you can find help or help each other, partners, customers, ourselves. We want to get even more life and traffic into the communities again.
That would be great. I have seen that at least in the last year and maybe during this year, I saw lots of new initiatives for the community. It seems that
Mm,
SAP is putting back some attention to
yes,
it. For some years, it was kind of empty space. You talked and you
yeah,
hear echo. But now it seems
right.
this topic is getting traction again.
Yes, yes, it is. It is for now, and it's fantastic. Yeah, I think it's great. There's another question I see. I don't know if it's Karen Rodriguez or Eduardo
Yes,
Chagas or someone from Inspire. Yeah, this is the SAP Champions hoodie here. Is it visible? Yeah, here. This is really,
nice one.
yeah, it's a nice thing. I would encourage everyone. There is this influencer tab in the SAP community also. So yeah, I'm not now here selling myself as an influencer, but for people that are really engaged, and there are many around SAP, have a look in the SAP community. There are SAP mentors and SAP champions. As employee, I cannot be an SAP mentor, and I think also I wouldn't maybe qualify it because I'm not so involved in development processes and products. But as you know, I'm very engaged in the community, in the social media also around SAP. I think also there's still a potential to spread more knowledge. Even there are fantastic people in LinkedIn also, and yeah, have a look if you like it. Maybe it's an interesting path also to become an SAP champion.
Yeah, certainly it is interesting, and I think that nowadays we are having lots of people also sharing more content, not only from SAP but partners. That is
Oh
also
yes,
good. If you are a consultant and you want to get more information, that's always a good source also in LinkedIn. And
fantastic. Yeah, I don't
uh,
have this feeling of competition so much anymore. Really, there are some people really share a lot of manuals, handbooks, and so on, and I really like it. Yeah, there
yeah,
should again be more on the SAP community maybe than on
yeah.
LinkedIn, but it is what it is.
Yeah, that's true. But if you look at things in the community or you search Google, that is something I noticed. I find answers from 10 years ago or 8 years ago, lots. But if I look
Mm,
for new things, I don't find any. So really, there
yeah.
is a gap of space in
Yes.
the community. I can
Yeah.
find many things, also good things from the past, but from the recent years, it really changed. And what I
Yes.
noticed, I'm not sure if you have seen the same, but here in Brazil, no, I'm
Mm.
in Germany, but I follow lots of people in Brazil.
Yeah.
What happened? These groups they migrated from these communities to closed space, to a Telegram group, to a WhatsApp group,
Ah.
to a Skype group. So
Mm.
lots of information they got really into enclosed space, and they are not
Mm.
being shared so often. And we see that lots of engagement when you post
Mm.
something like a PDF with a
Mm.
step-by-step
Yes.
configuration. These things have lots of interaction in social media. In the community, I don't see the same engagement. So maybe
Mm.
that's
True.
something that social media is taking away from the community.
Yes. Which is at the end, it's okay. The most important thing is that you can find what you need, and there will always be this kind of the special knowledge that you need really to implement something at the customer. I mean, you can never just take the manual and mechanically do the customizing, right? This would never be a good satisfying solution for the customer. So I think we should not worry too much about this. I mean, we also worry maybe about artificial intelligence and so on. Will it take away our job? I don't think so. And then maybe we will be one of the least industries. We will benefit from artificial intelligence. It will take away, again, like ask an expert peer, that's a human solution. Hopefully, it can take away 5% of our work. It would be fantastic. And 10%. We would always need the experts also to configure, to check the algorithms, to train them. We need to index documents and so on and so forth. I'm not worrying that all this will be taken away. And the same with the documentation and so on. It will never replace an implementation of a very complex software. There will always be enough work for experts, I think.
Yeah, I have seen this trend. Every time they come up with a new buzzword, it will replace something 100%,
Yeah,
but then it is really more or less a buzzword. After 2 3 years, everybody realize, okay, it's not going to change the world so fast or so easy.
yeah,
Things really, real
true.
things really take a lot of effort. But it's good that you mentioned artificial
Mm,
intelligence, because that is some area where I would ask you more.
mm,
What are, let's say, support things that are being implemented with machine learning or artificial
yeah,
intelligence? Because I
right.
saw even a post from a former colleague from SAP that he was indicated to this Hasselplattner award, something like that,
Mhm,
with some artificial intelligence for support that is now
yeah,
built in the launchpad.
yes. Yeah, there are some unknown gems and hidden gems, and we made a lot of learnings also with artificial intelligence because and there's a lot of buzz also around this, as you know. So sometimes in meetings, right, when people don't know how to really solve a certain issue, they say, "Oh, we will do this with AI," right? This is like an excuse, and it never works. And also, it's not about taking the current processes and then somehow plug in artificial intelligence. Sometimes you really need to redesign maybe the process. Yeah, you need to think beyond to really get the right value out of it. But making it more tangible, and I'm not up to date with the latest, let's say. But what I know, there are like three things come to my mind. One thing is rather in the call center, the CIC, where you call the 24 times 7 hotline, they get also lots of mails, for example, a lot of requests. So there is a use case about categorization because many mails are about a license key, for example. Many mails are about the speed up of an incident. And this you can plug in a categorization engine based on an AI that can really, with a higher reliability even than a rule-based engine, say, and then bring it forward to the right team. Yeah, sort. These are license requests, license key requests. These are speed up requests. This is another category, and this is something this is miscellaneous. I cannot put a category on it. So this is a good scenario that saves at the end time. Another one is about the component and the product. So there, what happens is that the customers sometimes and there are 10, 15,000 components or so. It's sometimes really, really difficult to find the right component, as you know, or you search with performance, right? Then you get database performance, you get performance management with success factors. So there are really tricky cases. And there AI can, at the end, once you send the case with all the description and so on, can do some plausibility check. Wow, the customer choose here BC Aura performance, but he's talking about people and managing employees. Doesn't fit, right? So it can then propose or even switch the component from BCDB Aura to the LOB success factors component. Yeah, this is another use case. And the third one that I like most, it's in the Launchpad and it's also internally used, but here we don't get still the right value out of it. It's called incident solution matching. Yeah, there it really, the engine goes through the whole incident, all the elements, the component, the description, and so on. Also checks the solutions that the customer has maintained and then proposes actually a solution. So it proposes a KBA as a solution. And you might guess, so for a normal incident in sales and procure, what would you estimate? How often is the solution within the first three proposed KBAs?
I
What
would
would you
guess
guess?
10%.
It's higher. It's rather 30%.
Hmm.
Yeah. So this is something that, and because at the beginning the system was not so strong, yeah, we had to train it a lot. And you need a lot of specific support, let's say the SAP terminology. Again, you cannot use normal AI text machines that use text engines also. You need really to understand the SAP, for example, termination also. It can be something in SD, it can be an order, it can be but it can also be an employee, right? So you really need to understand what it means in the SAP world. And now it's really better. So the engineer, when they open a case, they have a chance. The first thing is this engine does a search. They don't have to type in the keywords. You don't have to do anything manually because the engine reads the case in the database, applies the algorithms that are on top are learning also from also how often the results are used and which results are used, and it proposes KVAs to the engineer on the screen without typing in. Yeah, so it's really a big chance. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds quite impressive. Yeah, I can imagine it's still in early days. Probably in several years, it will be much more
It,
productive.
it's more mature than we are aware
Ah,
about. So this is the
oh,
rather the problem that we should get more out of it. And maybe it's something for a specific session, but there I would need to bring in an expert. Yeah, I'm not
no,
really the deep expert in this, but I'm very interested in this, as I said, because I think this is this is the way to go. And better, I think, as a manager also, I drive it. I really drive this forward instead of observing and or ignoring it. And the same is for business, by the way. Just today, I shared with our IV team BASF. There is a case, for example, that artificial intelligence, invoice verification, BASF gets, I don't know how many, 10,000 incidents per day. Sorry, 10,000 invoices per day. And they need to match this with the goods entry. So you do this with rules and so on, then 40% can be matched automatically. With AI, you can match 80% automatically. You match the invoice to the order that you gave to the provider and the goods entry, and no manual intervention needed. So this will come, AI as part of everything, as part of all the SAP business modules.
that's very interesting. And one thing I noticed, SAP also put a lot of, at least, marketing into conversational AI and chatbots.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Will we see these things also internally in the support, or that is something that doesn't fit the
Hmm.
tech industry?
Maybe. if if it saves work, and it I mean, as you see, we always measure customer satisfaction. We even want to go further. So, and I'm coming back to the conversational AI and the bots. Um, so we even want to start to measure not only at the end of the incident with the survey, but also in the middle with Qualtrics. For example, when the component changes, why not asking the customer, did you like the component change? Yes, no. So we can also get more insight even during the processing. But this is a different story. So with this conversational bots, we would of course also measure the customer satisfaction. I heard, for example, from parts of the world, some people prefer to talk to bots. For example, when they order a pizza, it's a bit far away from the support business, but they don't like to talk to other human beings to order a pizza. They prefer the bot to go through the bot. Fine, respectable. So maybe they prefer even this kind of bots. And for example, if you have looked at the support assistant trees or the guided answer trees, there actually we try to guide the customer. And again, it helps not in all the complexity of the cases, but it can help in maybe 15% of the cases. You find the solution if you go through it. Or even, as if you are an MMIV expert, maybe you are brought into a global trade settlement project where you are not so much the expert and you start to get into it. Maybe this guided answer tree can help you. So actually, it's a perfect, let's say, blueprint for such a conversational AI that guides you in a more friendly way through such a support assistant tree. It's not a big step. So why not going this way? I think at the end, as long as it can be maintained and it's not too confusing, it's always good to give options. Like with expert chat and written cases, we did not switch off the written cases, right? They are of course still there, but we give the option. So for some as users and some cases, maybe it's the most efficient way, or as you said, to complete also, right? To complete the case. Just maybe the phone number is missing or so. And if you are guided by such a conversational bot, it's more reliable that the information is really complete than just having an open text field. So it can have advantages for everyone at the end.
Yes, I remember that when you open the instant, there is kind of this template with some questions, but most people just ignore them or put
Exactly.
anything there, any random
Exactly. It's
text.
just deleted. Yeah. And again, probably the best would be that AI asked you at the end, oh, maybe you have forgotten to mention a phone number, right? In like a polite way, not in such a strict way. Most people would like it in a polite way. Would you like to add now the phone number? Yeah. But again,
Yeah, yeah. There were many things I remember that I hated when I was in SAP, and but this like
mm,
when you try to call the customer, but they didn't provide any name, any email, any
yeah,
contact, and I
right.
okay, then I have to reply the ticket. It takes another day or two to get an answer, just because I don't have any contact details. I
Yeah,
really never
exactly.
understood. People never send email without signature. Why they send a ticket without signature, without any name?
Yes.
That was for me always weird.
It's really a pity. Yes, exactly. Yeah.
But there was something,
Mhm.
maybe yeah, I always had one thing that I hated, and it's a
Mm.
fight between SAP and customers and consultants. Is a connection issues. I
Oh,
wanted to
yes.
ask about that, if that is still a thing, or if it's improving with the cloud systems. We don't need you don't need
Yes.
to ask so much
Yes.
things and has have so many problems with connection.
It is improving, and there are many aspects of this, and it's also related again to do we really reach our S users when we introduce something new? So first of all, for the cloud systems, it's really getting easier. There is so-called a CAM tool, Connection Assistant Manager or so. So that makes it really easier for the customer. Also, they either they don't have to do anything, or sometimes it depends if we can reproduce, let's say, in with a administrative user, then the customer doesn't need to give us anything for a public cloud. Yeah, only the permission. If sometimes we need a specific user to reproduce because it occurs only for the user, then we need, of course, some more data. But in case it's, let's say, cloud, then the technicalities of the connection are much better and much easier and much effortless. That said, for the, let's say, on-prem, there's a so-called line opener program. We just recently discussed it a lot. Many customers have not heard about the line opener program, unfortunately. So also,
And that
and it,
is 20 years old, probably.
yes, it is, but it makes life so much easier. So it's really like you advance all the configuration so that once you want to give the permission, it's really only one click instead of 25 clicks. So there's also still a long way to go for the connection topic, unfortunately.
And I can imagine also with now lots of different private cloud options from different hyperscale providers, there are new kinds of connection errors.
Yeah, but I'm not aware of real big issues. I don't know how this has been solved because we have now systems on Amazon, Asia, Google, of course, IBM, whatever. I don't want to exclude here any provider. And of course, lots of data centers from other providers like Telefonica and so on. I think this seems to work relatively in a reliable way. And as said, there have been made a lot of efforts to hide this complexity that is for sure there from both customers as well as us, right? For the support engineer, it's also a bit of annoying. We also programmed our own tool, the connection assistant. We have our own environment for support engineer. There's of course the core system where the cases are in, But around this, there is like our own browser-based tool where you even the teams can program kind of macros extension to this to make some tasks more efficient and so on. And there's also a connection assistant for the engineer, so that for them it's made more efficient.
That's good. That's good. And I have, I think it's one of my last questions would be more or less regarding what you have noticed that is evolving in terms of support. Now we have more cloud systems and we have lots of
Mm,
migration to private cloud and also to public cloud. And what is changing in the support world? What kind of challenges or things you see that are really different now with all these cloud systems?
yeah, there are a number of things. One is, I don't know if it really comes from the cloud. I mean, there is, of course, in general, the expectation that the customer has to do less. Yeah, it's more or less everything has to be there in the cloud. Like even if you can do the implementation pressing a button, right? Or you get the system already implemented. Of course, as we discussed, I mean, the business processes are rather getting more complex. If you think about supply chain, also, I mean, and with all respect, one thing is maybe talent management and paying salaries, which is also complex. And with COVID, there have been lots of rules. Sometimes you also underestimate this. But if I think about the production line of Porsche or Nestle supply chain or so, yeah, you can put this, of course, in the cloud and have more hosting and automate some things. But the complexity has to be there because it's part of the business secret of Nestle, right? You cannot
Yeah.
kind of simplify this away suddenly. Mm, but and also and what I also saw rather outside is for smaller and mid-sized companies, they their businesses are also getting more complex because of the possibilities of internet. They start to deliver globally, offer globally, be available 24 times 7. So this complexity rather goes into the other direction. Yeah, that smaller and mid-sized companies suddenly need to think about embargoes or so. Yeah, before they sold only in Brazil, now they sell to the whole Latin America and maybe to the whole world. So there are like these divergent trends. And what I rather see, so there's this one thing, the expectation from the customer that the provider has to take care of everything. Yeah, and it needs to be also cheaper. It's cloud, so it should be cheaper for the customer, but the costs are still there. Of course, then there are like, of course, Google, Amazon, there is scaling, right? It's really getting much cheaper, the hardware and the server operations for these huge data centers. So there is some cost efficiency. But the other thing is this consumerization of IT. As I said, the world and the businesses are getting more complex, but also ourselves, when we interact with support, also or with the systems, you think it needs to be like the iPhone, right? Do you think when you got to a new update of LinkedIn or whatever, WhatsApp, do you think you have to test it? Do you expect bugs when
No,
you
never.
when you when you update your apps? Never, right? Even
Never.
if you update your iOS, you don't really think that there will be bugs. You are a bit more careful. You take a backup or so. And I think this is how we grow up. And I see this also with my daughter, for example. She's now 18. She does many web applications and so on. Sometimes she interacts with universities. She does this the day before a deadline. And some things don't work. And I always tell her, it's not perfect, these kind of applications. Do this a week before. But she's grown up with the cell phone, whether it's Android or iOS. She thinks that it's impossible that something doesn't work. And otherwise, you download the new version, there can never be a bug or a problem. And this is what, at the end, users also expect from software like SAP. But
Yeah,
it's impossible.
I see this kind of expectation, and I kind of have it as well. Mainly when I am implementing SAP notes. That's one of the times I
Yes,
realize,
yes.
okay, this I
There's
wanted to have
yes.
something magic that doesn't have any problem.
Yes, and there I have also to protect a little bit our colleagues in globalization services. There is maybe sometimes the biggest challenge, but why is it? Because there are some really, really challenges. This. There's a limited time between a law is published and the law is mandatory to apply. No one understands the law when it's published, right? Then maybe the law is written in a way that really doesn't fit with the business. So it's really, really a long way. And sometimes it's really, really tough to develop a good solution, to be honest.
Yes,
But
I've been there. I really know that. I really know the details of how the notes
yeah,
are produced and how they are tested.
but I
I know
think
it's
we
quite
still we
complicated.
need to get better with this. Yeah, as
Yeah.
I said, we want to measure the effort more, and we want to minimize the effort. And this means, for example, less note versions, more automatically applicable notes, TCI or whatsoever, less manual effort. Yeah.
Yeah, there is a big evolution there. When
Mm.
I started in SAP, everything was a manual step. So
Yeah.
I remember notes that had 200 pages of manual
Mm.
steps, and now there are
Yes.
more things. So dictionary objects are being delivered in correction instructions. We have this
Yes.
transport-based correction instruction. These are
Yes.
really good tools, and they really add a lot of value for customers. Customers really value that. When
Yeah.
I ask a basis team from a customer to apply 20 notes for localization, sometimes they, do they have manual steps? Oh, that's a lot of effort. Yeah, but
Yeah.
in the past it was much worse. In the past it was 200
Exactly.
pages. It was 10 days for
Exactly.
a note.
We've gone a long way, yes, exactly, but we can never stop. We always need to find ways to make things more effortless. Yeah, this is very much true, and the expectation is there. We just grow up like this now. I heard also somewhere, maybe I don't know if you run out of time, but there was this kind of, now the kids in school, for example, they are all used to tablets, cell phones. They, of course, they have never configured a printer, for example. They never needed this, or they don't know about the printer cables, the adapter, but also they've not been in touch with code. It's our generation that has been in touch with code, with basic, maybe Fortran, some whatever, COBOL, Pascal, but the kids now, they've never seen code. It's really curious.
That's interesting to see. I see
So
lots of trends, but I think that code is getting involved in everything. At least in
yes,
what I do, I see it
exactly.
everywhere.
At the end, if you take away these layers, then you get down to code, absolutely, and how important coding is at the end. But it's more and more and more encapsulated.
Oh,
And also, like one thing that comes to my mind, this zero downtime upgrades just also
ah,
goes into this direction. For example, it has now been released, and it's a miracle for me. I have been in VC UPG, and now that there's really a general release of zero downtime upgrade, how this is done, it's really science at the end, or really, really very sophisticated. But it's a fantastic step forward, right? That with future S4HANA releases, you can do this with zero downtime. I mean, that's fantastic.
yeah, and that is really great value for the customers
Yeah,
because cutover during upgrades was really a critical phase, and it was always something planned and rehearsed before big upgrades. And now being able to do that with zero downtime, that would be really good.
yeah. Now we need the zero effort notes
Yeah, maybe
everywhere.
that's a topic
That's the
for a
next
new
challenge.
next generation support. Yeah.
Exactly. Or new
For a
Hasso
new
Platter award.
generation, new Hasselplatter Award. Yeah, that is true. I would like already to say thank you for the time for participating in this 1 hour conversation. It was really fast.
Yes,
Topics
absolutely. We
went through.
we could go for hours, I think, but it would be too tiring also for the audience. It was really fantastic. Very hands-on, and it was. I had a great time, Renan, and I know we cannot always repeat, but if you want to have me again in the future, count on me. I'm really happy
Maybe
to.
for season two, we can find even more topics. And
Absolutely.
I would like also to ask you, for example, this video will be published in LinkedIn and
Yes.
YouTube. And if you want to give your contacts or recommend something to be followed by consultants, basically everybody that is going to see it is a consultant. We are not having
Yeah,
really marketing or salespeople. It's down
yeah,
to earth to
no problem.
consultants.
Yeah. I think we will just follow up. I'm happy. I mean, I try really also in that sense to share also sometimes important knowledge. I'm also working into this direction. I want to be better, to share maybe hot KBAs, or legal changes, to point out what are the key documents, where is the external jam group also. And with this, the more we interact, the more followers I can reach on LinkedIn or Twitter, the better. I mean, if you think my content is boring, you just unfollow. But I really invite everyone to have a look and check out the accounts on Twitter, LinkedIn, also a bit of Facebook, and of course Instagram doesn't fit so much for technical content. But I will share the accounts with you, and yeah, I'm happy to provide better content also there.
Okay, thank you for helping and also to providing content that is also very valuable from SAP and coming from SAP executives. It's very interesting to have this interaction. A lot of consultants would like to see and follow that for sure.
Right.
So thank you very much and have a nice night. You are in
Thank
Spain,
you.
right?
Yeah, it's now 7, I think. I now have to pick up the other daughter. She's playing clarinet. Yesterday she started to practice the Mozart clarinet concert. It was really, really nice to listen to it. So yeah, now my private life will start. Exactly.
Okay, then
Good.
enjoy it and good time with your
Have a
kids
good
then.
time in Germany. Stay safe, Renan. It's
Yes.
not over. So everyone around the globe also stay safe, follow the rules, don't commit a tragic mistake, and then we will be through with this hopefully again in whatever 6-12 months. It will
Yeah.
really be over. Get
Hopefully
vaccinated.
soon.
Exactly.
Everybody
Okay.
get vaccinated. Bye.
Bye bye, Renan. Was a
Bye.
fantastic time. Bye.